That's right. They're back for the first time in a while, right?
Yeah. Hope everybody's having a great day. Guess this is a Wednesday, right? Does that sound right to folks? You can tell how my week is going.
So do you want to be responsible for managing the slide deck today in the session, since we'll be working from one presentation, or would it be more helpful for me to be advancing the slides?
Was that for me, Lindsay? I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry, that was for you. Mhm.
Yeah. I do have to share. I do have a hard stop. I do have a hard step at let me turn my session off real quick. Okay. I do have a hard stop at 12:50, so it might have to, if the conversation goes longer, I might have to hand it off.
Okay, that sounds good.
And let me see if I can. Let's see if I can share my screen so folks can see the PowerPoint. How do we do that? I don't know if I have that option here.
It should be the share screen button. If it's enabled for you, should be green.
Okay, I think it's under my options here. Let's see. That's not quite right.
Folks are popping into the room. Thank you for joining us today, and also for tolerating our efforts to get this tech operational.
Can folks see my can folks see the Google Slides right there?
It just looks white.
Like it's just white.
White.
That's no. I'm sorry, Lindsay. I don't know what I'm doing here.
Okay, let me see what happens if I try to share it on my end.
Oh, I think I got it figured out here.
Okay.
How's this look?
That looks great. Thank you.
Okay. We're rocking and rolling now. There is a view slideshow. Okay.
All right. So I think it seems like most of the folks have chosen a breakout room at this point from the main session. So I think we can go ahead and dive into our Farm Bill discussion today. And yes, thank you, Sally, for the reminder that the chat is a great place to drop your name and the organization or your affiliation, and do some nice introductions. Ezra, why don't you kick us off today?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Lindsay. Hey, folks, my name is Ezra Thrush. I'm the Vice President of Government Affairs for Penn Future. We're the statewide affiliate in Pennsylvania for the National Wildlife Federation. I'm essentially just the chief lobbyist for Penn Future. I'm based in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, the capital city, and I'm just across the street from the Capitol building. So I mostly focus on state legislative advocacy work, but we also focus on federal work. In particular, our Farm Bill is going to be really important. But let me just... Today we're talking about the Farm Bill and what's in it for Appalachia, what's in it for our organizations and the Reimagined Appalachia Coalition. And today we're going to be co-hosting, co-facilitating between PASA Sustainable Agriculture, for whom Lindsay works, and Penn Future, of course, which is my organization. There's our names. We can share contact information in the chat as well, if that's helpful for folks, if you want to continue the conversation after today. But we both work for Penn Future and PASA Sustainable Agriculture. We both work on the Farm Bill advocacy around the 2023 Farm Bill. And we're coordinating a number of efforts, but making sure we get what we need for sustainability and conservation in this year's Farm Bill. And then just a bit about Penn Future, if you're not familiar with us, we do a lot of work on clean energy, economy. We do work on policy advocacy, communications. We have a legal program, and we do work on field organizing and campaigns and developing leaders to work on air, water, clean energy policy in Pennsylvania. And Lindsay, I'll let you discuss and talk about PASA and the great work you all do.
Sure, thanks, Ezra. So My role at PASA is as the Farm Bill campaign organizer. So I work with farmers in our network to find their voices in this upcoming reauthorization process. I also operate a diversified veggie farm in Berks County, so on the eastern side of the state. I'm sorry, Berks County, Pennsylvania. And so PASA as an organization is Pennsylvania-based, but we worked with farmers throughout the region through our research programs, our apprenticeship programs, and peer-to-peer learning opportunities. PASA also has an increasing role within state and federal level policy, trying to think up strategies to advance the goals of farmers in our network.
Thanks, Lindsay. So here's our agenda today. We're going to talk about Farm Bill 101 for those of you who aren't familiar with Farm Bill. I know that we have varying backgrounds and expertise on Farm Bill, and you'll find out soon why it's an important part for us to engage. And this is a ReImagine Appalachia Coalition partners this year. We're going to talk about Farm Bill opportunities. Lindsay is going to lay out a lot of the policy priorities that PASA Sustainable Agriculture and folks in her world have for the Farm Bill. I'm going to discuss the current political landscape. Where do we sit today with 2023 Farm Bill, what the timing looks like, what are the opportunities to engage, and together we'll discuss action steps. And then as a part of this whole strategy summit this week is trying to figure out what our work plan is for the Reimagined Appalachia Coalition for 2023. And so Lindsay's going to lead us through a Jamboard brainstorming exercise to talk about what work we plan to do, and answering a few other questions that will help guide the policy advocacy for Reimagined Appalachia Coalition. So I'll just head to the next item here. Farm Bill 101. What is Farm Bill? Farm Bill is just it's a big, huge omnibus package of legislation that really encapsulates a lot of the agriculture policy that the country has. Every 5 years, the Farm Bill is put together by the U.S. House of Agriculture, Committee of Agriculture, and the Senate Committee on Agriculture, Nutrition, and Forestry. Every 5 years, this is led by different members of the House and Senate Agriculture Committees. The last Farm Bill we had was in 2018. And at that time, fortunate enough for us in Pennsylvania, Senator Bob Casey was on the Agriculture, Nutrition, and Forestry Committee that led the work on the Farm Bill. And unfortunately, at that time, the Republicans were in the majority of that bill. The Democrats are now in control of the Senate, but now we don't have Senator Bob Casey on the committee any longer. We have a few other folks who are from Appalachia who are on the committee. The chair of the Committee on Agriculture in the Senate right now is Senator Debbie Stabenow from Michigan, and she's been on agriculture for a long time. She's been working really closely with a lot of folks from Ohio and Pennsylvania and West Virginia on moving forward good things for our region on conservation in the Farm Bill. A lot of folks don't know this, but Farm Bill is not just, it's a big part of it is on commodity pricing for sugar, cotton, dairy, those kinds of things. But a large part of it also is around food policy. And you might be aware of the SNAP program and benefits that come from for SNAP that comes from the Farm Bill. That's a big part of the legislation that happens every year or every 5 years. And a lot of folks don't know this, but the Farm Bill is actually the single largest source of conservation funding from the federal government every 5 years. So there's a big play for conservation groups. This session is on the track of groups that are working on natural infrastructure and conservation with the Reimagined Appalachia Coalition. So there's a really big opportunity for our organizations to lean in and engage on the Farm Bill and try to push some policies that we've been pushing through Reimagined Appalachia. This is the next big thing for 2023 that we can maybe try to engage on and get some of our policies pushed. So it contains, there's a lot of stuff in here about research, jobs, infrastructure, health and nutrition. There are all kinds of things that happen in the Farm Bill. So it's a big year to engage. Again, in 2018, we had some success in getting more money for conservation dollars for farmers, specifically in Pennsylvania and in the Chesapeake Bay watershed, working with Senator Casey, working on the CREP program, if you're familiar with that. It's a buffer funding program for farmers, and we're eager to continue pushing this year. Something I hadn't mentioned yet is that this year, whoever writes the farm bill, it switches between committee every 5 years. In 2018, the Senate had led the work on the farm bill, and now in 2023, the House leads on the farm bill. And where we sit today, the brand new incoming chair for the House Agriculture Committee is going to be Glenn Thompson, or GT Thompson, as he likes to go by it, GT. He's a congressman in Pennsylvania, the 15th congressional district, kind of focused in the State College area in Pennsylvania, and has much of northwestern Pennsylvania. But he is big into dairy farming. That's a big issue for him. And having somebody on House Agriculture leading that committee from Pennsylvania, I think, will bode well for the Appalachian region. And so a lot of us have touch points with him and his staff and have good relationships with those folks. And we're going to be doing some work around GT Thompson coming soon. So what's in the farm bill here is just a pie chart of what the farm bill looks like. There are many different parts of the farm bill. A lot of the work that we do, not just at Penn Future, but I'm sure at PASA Sustainable Agriculture and our similar groups, we focus primarily on the conservation title and on the forestry title, more so the conservation title. But a lot of the programs that farmers and landowners get to help out with conservation come from these bits. And SNAP is a big part of it, though, if you see the pie chart. And we can share these slides as well, if that's okay with you, Lindsay. We can share that out with folks after the meeting. Here's just what the farm bill prioritizes. A lot of it is in subsidies, a lot of it's in insurance. Lindsay, I don't know if you have anything more to share about this slide, other than that takes up the most of the money. It's a big part of its conservation and food policy, but a lot of it's on subsidies and insurance for different kinds of crops. Lindsay, anything else you wanted to share on this slide in particular?
No, thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Here's just a breakdown of the conservation money that we get every year. This is based on the 2018 conservation funding. We have different programs here. Anytime you work in policy, especially federal policy, you have alphabet soup. There's a lot of jargon in this space in particular, so we can break it down. These are different grant programs that you can participate in, that you get money from the USDA or the U.S. Department of Agriculture. I'll try to demystify a couple acronyms as we go along. And a lot of this is done through the NRCS, the Natural Resources Conservation Service, which is a part of the USDA. And we have NRCS offices all throughout the country, different regions, and their state offices too. But a lot of the funding that I've worked with farmers in particular to get funding for buffer plantings and those kinds of things, and putting in pest management practices, we've done a lot of work in particular getting funding from the Regional Conservation Partnership Program, the RCPP, also through the Conservation and Reserve Program, CRP. But we also advocate for more money at ASAP, the Agriculture Conservation Easements Program, and EQIP. We do a lot of work just advocating to get more dollars into those programs so that money in turn can turn into projects on the ground that farmers and landowners can implement, and to work on land conservation and water quality. Lindsay, I'm sure you'll share how your farmers use these programs too, and your partners use these programs. And I'm going to kick it back over to Lindsay now, just to talk about the Farm Bill opportunities for 2023. And Lindsay, just let me know when you want me to hit to the next slide then.
Thanks so much, Ezra. So you can go ahead and advance to the next slide. I'm going to go over some of the things that we've been hearing with farmers in our network. PASA, like so many organizations, have been holding listening sessions over the past 18 months or so to try to get a sense of what growers and other stakeholders, and really anyone who touches the food system, would like to see in this upcoming Farm Bill reauthorization. So I've included some of what we've been hearing here, just to kind of get some of your juices flowing and thoughts percolating about what sort of changes we'd like to see that are most applicable to the Reimagine Appalachia Coalition. So back in 2021, and I'm going to call out Sarah Nicholas, and just in the instance that you want to add anything to this piece, please feel free to hop off mute. So Sarah Nicholas, along with a number of other partners worked with Senator Casey's office back in 2021 to dream up an iteration, one of several iterations of what a revitalized civilian conservation corps could look like. And the Farm Bill is one potential opportunity to make this a reality. So I'm going to borrow Sarah's words to describe what the actual application of this could be. So a new CCC could work with federal dollars could be awarded to put together crews and train them in different skill sets, including mine reclamation, stream restoration, tree planting, firefighting, and woodland fuel reduction, restoration of industrial sites and blighted neighborhoods, carpentry, and other trades. These skills would be put to use on projects needed most by the community or region, including work on farms to install conservation practices like cover crops, riparian buffers, tree planting, maintenance, barnyard improvements. I would love all those things on my own farm. Crew members would get on the job skill training and move on prepared for future jobs with better stability and better pay. Young crew members might get to stay in the communities they grew up in, and some might even want to become farmers. So the Reimagined CCC is one potential dream that we have for the upcoming Farm Bill reauthorization. And let's see, next slide. Something that we hear a lot from growers in our network is the importance of farmers teaching other farmers. And so some of that work happens through conservation technical assistance dollars that fund mentorship programs. But PASA and a lot of our partner orgs would like to see an expansion of technical assistance to really elevate the voices of farmers and, harness the power of farmers teaching other farmers. So having that be through mentorship programs and other ways to kind of deputize farmers to do technical assistance. PASA farmers farmers in PASA's network are, incredibly attuned to the needs of soil health and the importance of soil health in terms of climate resilience and, downstream benefits and having to do with water infiltration and the relationship between soil health and crop yields and all the different ways that healthy soil makes for healthier farms and healthier communities. And there are a lot of opportunities within the Farm Bill to support soil health initiatives. So integrating more soil testing into the working lands programs and soil health best practices more broadly into CSP and EQIP. Those are two acronyms. One is Conservation Stewardship Program. EQIP stands for Environmental Quality Initiatives Program, I think, but both of them are conservation programs that work specifically with farmland that's being actively farmed. Another potential avenue for encouraging soil health best practices within the Farm Bill is the expansion of the pandemic cover crop program. That was an initiative in which growers received discounts on their crop insurance premiums for planting cover crops. And I've talked to farmers in our network that really saw a lot of benefit in that. We've also heard a lot about improved transparency and accessibility of USDA programs. So that could look like program navigators that exist, whose job it is to help potential USDA customers work through all the different applications and program requirements and reporting requirements that go along with USDA grants and cost share initiatives. More accessible offices, clearer ranking criteria, so you have a sense of how your application is being ranked in comparison to other applications that are submitted to different NRCS programs specifically. And then one big piece of making USDA programs more accessible is tweaking some of the cost share arrangements. So using cost shares to incentivize practices that have regenerative and sustainable benefits, and shifting the cost share amounts so that folks that are identified are lumped into the kind of socially disadvantaged category, which is not a great, I don't think it's the most productive term, but would have the opportunity to not have to be, they wouldn't have to be reimbursed for their participation in different NRCS programs. We'd also like to see better opportunities for young and beginning farmers, or more stable funding for apprenticeships, using some of the conservation, the land conservation programs to encourage land access initiatives. And another specific policy recommendation that I think makes a lot of sense is pre-approval, FSA pre-approval of mortgages, so that young and beginning farmers who are entering the real estate market can be on the same, or have a at least some advantage, or not, I guess, not be disadvantaged in some of these high stakes real estate transactions. Investment in climate resilience. So this, ties back to the soil health question as well, but more emphasis on agroforestry and NRCS programs, a stronger farm safety net for diversified producers. So there are programs that exist, like the Whole Farm Revenue Protection Program and the Micro Farm Program, that try to provide the same sort of security that like the crop insurance commodity programs do for larger producers, but they need to be reformed in order to be as successful as they can be. And then lastly, prioritizing practices that mitigate climate change in NRCS programs. So the last kind of big bucket of recommendations that I want to touch upon is vibrant local food systems. So that looks like increased investment in nutrition assistance programs, support for things like the value-added producer grants, which allow growers to expand their product offerings and enhance their bottom line, and efforts to enhance regional supply chains. So that could be support for food hubs or cooperatives, investments in processing capacity, and transportation infrastructure, and all the sorts of ways that improvements that regional food hubs or regional food systems need to be able to supply their communities. So that is just kind of a quick overview of some of the things that we've heard from growers in our network, and we'll spend some time further in the session trying to drill down on what sorts of programs and opportunities would be most beneficial to the Reimagine Appalachia Coalition.
Thanks, Lindsay. I'm going to lead just the next part of this conversation, and I won't belabor, but I just want to kind of level set and talk about where we are right now with the political landscape. As you all might know, in Washington right now, Republicans just took control of the U.S. House. There's a 5-seat majority, so it's very narrow margins between the two parties, as you might have seen last week when the House is trying to organize itself and pick a new speaker, and we still haven't accepted a new rules package or started committees. We have heard that some of the committees are going to be organized today at the U.S. House. These are going to be the top ones: Ways and Means, Rules, Energy and Commerce, and Appropriations will be organized today. We haven't officially had organization of the Agriculture Committee yet, but that's something that Congressman Thompson and a lot of folks are trying to get to the bottom of as soon as we can. This committee is going to be charged with, again, taking the first crack at drafting the Farm Bill for 2023. And I got to spend some time with G.T. Thompson over the last few months. I asked him what the top priority was for him for this year's Farm Bill, and he kind of joked, but he was kind of serious. He said to get the thing done on time, and so there's some honesty about that. The political space is going to be pretty tricky this year in Washington, as it is typically, but there seems to be an extra layer of tension this time around. They likely won't begin their work until February or later into early in March, and then the idea is to have at least the first draft sitting and passing through committee and getting marked up later this fall and passage sometime later this year. So it's a lot of work. The House has to do a good bit of the heavy lifting, and then the Senate also produces a product and they do a conference committee. That's something that'll take place later this year, hopefully, if they hold everything on track. So at this point in time, Congressman Thompson is planning to be as bipartisan as he possibly can. His take is that he doesn't want to run this as a one-party committee and only one party gets their positions and political bits into the bill and only their policy priorities. He's also been pretty thorough and interested in reaching out to all parts of the agriculture and conservation space. He's not interested only in hearing from producers, whether that's from big industry agriculture or different sectors in particular in agriculture. He also wants to hear from folks in conservation. Everybody who's touched by the Farm Bill, he wants to hear from, which is great. Lindsay and I actually have a Farm Bill hearing, or keep wanting to call it a hearing, but it's not an official hearing, but a listening session this coming Friday in Harrisburg at the Pennsylvania Farm Show. Congressman Thompson is hosting a listening session with a bunch of members of Congress who are likely to be officially serving on the House Committee on Agriculture, and Lindsay's actually presenting testimony there, so that's exciting. We're looking forward to that. Where we sit on the Senate side, they're going to start to work on Farm Bill hearings as well. Trying to hear about the issues, listening to a lot of the stakeholders in the agriculture and conservation space to learn what they should do. But they'll be working on some products, but they won't have the same pressure as the U.S. House Committee on Agriculture at this time. I know Lindsay and I and a bunch of our colleagues in the conservation space have been doing some work and reaching out to members of the staff of the Committee on House Agriculture, and they're going to prove to be pretty critical. I just wanted to make a note for folks. I've been getting this question a lot since the fall. You might have seen some news reports that Congressman Thompson was quoted in saying he didn't want to make this a climate bill. There's been some consternation and gnashing of teeth that he might try to strip out a bunch of the climate dollars that were part of this and try to maybe go after some of the climate dollars for agriculture that were a part of the Inflation Reduction Act. My conversations were with him recently, excuse me, lead me to think that, we reframe this as dollars that are important for healthy soils, dollars that are important for watershed protection, for farmers to have more productive farms, and to talk about land conservation, water conservation, and not so much use the climate frame. He's really excited about that. He still wants to keep that money there. He's still all about bringing money back home for farmers and landowners to do the good work of conservation. But the climate change terminology seems to be something that's causing him heartburn, and folks in his caucus and folks in his district. So he's just sensitive to that. I just want to give some caution to folks who are concerned that he might get rid of everything that has to do with climate in the legislation. I think all that stuff might still stay there, but might just be reframed away from climate change in particular to things that sound more like conservation and healthy soils and those kinds of things. All of that stuff is still climate work and still climate dollars, but we might have to reframe how we talk about it. The political landscape here, the Congressman Thompson's kicking off this first listening session. The House Committee on Agriculture is going to have a series of these across the country. I know that the Agriculture Committee met a number of times last year and holding similar meetings throughout the country under the Democratic control. That's going to continue for a few months. And then maybe in the next month or two, the committee staff will start to pull things together and start to write language. And so it's really an important time for us to engage, all of us who are already working on Farm Bill 2023, but hopefully more groups from the Reimagined Appalachia Coalition will understand why it's important to dig in and to weigh in. And we're going to talk about action steps and how we can get involved here in a little bit. But really, what we're up to now is it's almost just about time to get engaged and to let our legislators know what we think of Farm Bill, in particular folks on the agriculture committees in the House and the Senate, but other folks who are involved like leadership, appropriations. If we have connections with USDA, all of those kind of folks are really important to lean into this thing. And again, like just as Lindsay had said, there are a number of policy priorities we're pushing. We're also at Penn Future and the environmental groups that are part of this work. We're really adamant about getting the Revive the CCC Act done. We had a valiant effort in the last Congress trying to attach it to a number of bills, including what was once called the Build Back Better Act and then the Inflation Reduction Act. Unfortunately, those didn't happen, and we had tried to get some of that language and money into the omnibus funding package from last Congress. That didn't happen. So this is the next big thing. Talking with Senator Casey and his staff, that they think that this might be a good opportunity for us to get that language involved and get the money attached to the thing. And what I had heard from Congressman Thompson is that he is not opposed. At the first outset, he is not opposed to that idea. So we'll probably have to keep working on him on it, and Senator Casey will be too. So I'll stop there. I'm probably talking too much. Lindsay, I'm going to kick it over to you, or is it me next? Just to talk about action steps. I guess I can talk about this a little bit, Lindsay, and if you want to fill in. So I had alluded to it, the next thing is to contact your legislator. A lot of us are I think we have a good bit of Pennsylvanians who are represented on this work group and the broader Reimagine Appalachia Strategy Summit. But if you're not Pennsylvanian, please contact your congressional delegation from your state. If you're in Pennsylvania and you're working on these issues, these policy issues, even if you don't work within Congressman Thompson's district and his territory, I would recommend, if you're doing policy work on these issues, do still reach out to him and let him know your policy priorities and your positions on what the Farm Bill should include in 2023. But also let the Congress people who represent you, the Congress people who work in your territory, your organization's footprint, make sure that they know what you're looking for in the next 2023 Farm Bill. Organizing farm tours or field days to showcase Farm Bill policy recommendations and funding recommendations is really important. I'll just give an example. Lindsay, I'm sure you have an example or two as well. Just this summer, I was able to take G.T. Thompson trout fishing up in Center County, Pennsylvania, and that was a good time. He likes fly fishing, and just showing him the connection between the land practices and the water quality and what that means for wildlife is really important. We work predominantly on clean water issues at Penn Future, and just making that connection between the water quality and the land practices and conservation was really important. And just trying to talk with him about how these streams were protected and improved because of practices that were put in place funded by Farm Bill monies that came from RCPP and money from ASAP. And then in coordination with a bunch of folks from something called the Choose Clean Water Coalition, we were able to take Congressman Thompson on a tour of about 4 or 5 farms. I think most of those were dairies. I think there was a vegetable producer, and I think a cattle producer there as well throughout Center County this summer. And we pointed out with the farmers hand in hand, we pointed out the projects that the farmers had implemented or were working on, or maybe a few years after they had implemented their projects that were funded by Farm Bill monies that were really important. And a lot of those folks also got monies from other Department of Interior and EPA grant programs, but just trying to show the successes of the monies that are invested in conservation and what it means for like water quality and our natural infrastructure is really important. Lindsay, I don't know if you want to take a minute or two to share. You probably have lots of great examples too. I know PASA Sustainable Agriculture does all kinds of stuff with electeds in the field too.
Yeah, I think it's important. I think that's a great example, and it's important too to bring it back to Chris's question in the chat about ways to tackle some of the headwinds in terms of navigating the Farm Bill landscape. Because I think that one of the most successful things that we can do as advocates is to show the real world impact of the conservation dollars and give legislators the opportunity to hear directly from farmers about how conservation money is not only kind of improving the environmental outcomes, but improving the business outcomes on their operations as well. So I think the sorts of events that Ezra was talking about and the events that PASA has tried to put together as well are a really critical piece in thinking through tackling some of those headwinds. In addition to that, I want to note that a lot of the policy recommendations that folks are putting forth are voluntary and incentive based. And so there's a way in which they feel, I think, less adversarial in terms of, not necessarily pitting different farming communities against each other, but recognizing that, there are ways that we can encourage and support sustainable agriculture practices that don't directly disadvantage other farmers.
That's 100% right, Lindsay. And I'll just share from the environmental perspective. Too long, I think folks in our camp had decided the sticks were the best way to get the policy goals, and in real life, putting carrots out there are the best way to get conservation goals accomplished, I think, especially working in the agriculture sector. Just a couple other examples of ways we can get involved here, and action steps that we would recommend for getting involved with the 2023 Farm Bill include, writing op-eds. We're looking to maybe do a couple op-eds this year. Having one from the ReImagine Appalachia perspective will be really important. Contributing to a sign-in letter, trying to write a letter to talk about our policy priorities. If we have shared principles and shared goals across the coalition, and what we can do for Appalachia and the 2023 Farm Bill, I think writing a sign-in letter in which a lot of organizations, in particular C3s and businesses and groups of citizens, can join on to sign a letter, and we can share that with every member of the congressional delegation from all of our states in Appalachia. And I'll just mention, just getting our senators out is really important too. I know in Pennsylvania in particular, we have a new senator, Senator Fetterman. He's not as ingratiated in these programs and details yet, so just taking him out for a tour would be a great idea. And I think we have a couple new members. I think Ohio has a new member in the Senate, and we have a few other folks. Just trying to get them educated on the policy issues and getting them educated on what happens on the ground is really important. So with that, Lindsay, I think I'll kick it over to you for the next section here.
Sure. Thanks, Ezra. So I'm going to try to lead us in a Jamboard exercise. I want to be fully transparent here. I've never done this before. So if it is feeling like a complete failure, please come off mute and feel free to let me know. So I dropped a link in the chat to the Jamboard. So if folks wouldn't mind navigating over to the Jamboard, and we can start working through a couple of these little exercises that I put together. So I'll give folks a moment to hop on. But the first activity that I've put together here is just a way to kind of gauge people's familiarity with the Farm Bill, and whether you feel like you are, ready to testify on the Hill, or if you are still kind of getting your feet wet in this world. So if you could just click on an X and drag it to where you feel like you are. Oh, I'm excited to see that we have some Farm Bill experts among us. So yeah, and if anybody wants to come off mute too and give some context to their own Farm Bill background, or what kind of brought them to this session as we're completing this exercise, that sort of activity is definitely encouraged. Great. So it looks like as responses are starting to come in, that we have a whole range of Farm Bill expertise in the room. So that's good to know. And also, yeah, will hopefully be a good groundwork for the discussion. So if we want to move forward to this next Jamboard slide, what I'm trying to do here is kind of get a sense of what your organizations and the groups that you're affiliated with, what parts of the Farm Bill are most relevant to what you're doing. So if you want to go ahead and click the sticky note icon, which should be on the left-hand side of your screen. And if you mouse over it, it will say sticky note. And so if you were to click that and then choose the color, this one's a little convoluted, my apologies for that. Choose the color of the category and your org name. Oh, you guys are so good. Look at this. So if you are most interested in nutrition assistance as an organization, then go ahead and create a pink sticky with your org name on it. And this is just a way to kind of visualize the different areas of the Farm Bill that the folks in attendance today are most involved with. And if there's any Farm Bill bucket that doesn't, if these Farm Bill buckets that are listed here don't capture the things that your organization is most interested in, then yeah, please feel free to add a new sticky altogether. I guess I'll throw that out there too. Do any categories come to mind things that you are interested in the Farm Bill that aren't really reflected in the regional food systems, land access, farmer training, conservation, ag research, or nutrition assistance areas.
Hi, Lindsay. This is Adrienne with National Young Farmers Coalition. I think one area that you mentioned earlier that would be helpful to include is the USDA accountability piece. That kind of fits into everything, but is a whole monster of its own.
True. Great. I'm going to create a new sticky with that.
That's really important. I just want to thank you for raising that, Adrienne. You know, we have a lot of friends and colleagues who left a bunch of our NGOs, our colleague NGOs, and friends on the Hill to join USDA, especially at the beginning of the Biden administration. But you know, from time to time, even our friends need some prodding as to what they need to be doing and how they need to be working on things to improve USDA and its processes. So that I agree with that 100%.
So Lindsay, I'm not sure, this is Sally, I'm not sure that it's worth another sticky, but I'm just thinking about when you have the conservation of natural resources. I know all the things that sort of fit under climate and energy are not, there's not a single title for that. It's sort of sprinkled everywhere, but it might be worth having that as a category too, just as a collective bucket for the types of things that may or may not fall underneath there, particularly given what Ezra was talking about earlier with the political landscape and what things may shift on and off the table. And while I'm talking, I'll just come off on video just a second. So I put in the chat earlier, I work for the Nature Conservancy. I work for our Central Appalachians program. Our organization lobbies an awful lot on the Farm Bill especially because of the conservation title. In the Appalachians, we're focused a lot on the forestry initiatives, but also I'm just sort of here today listening and learning to y'all and on the other issues that are important to other organizations. So thanks for the time.
Great. Thanks so much, Sally.
Part of it. Yeah.
Great. And we do have another question in the chat too about, is there anything in the Farm Bill around electrifying equipment, capturing methane, or energy reliability for agriculture, et cetera. And so, yeah, some of those pieces are in the energy title, and then I think some of them would be in the conservation title as well in terms of capturing methane on production farms. So, yeah, I think there are definitely pieces of the Farm Bill that touch upon energy as well. And I don't know if Ezra, you would like to answer that question in any more detail.
Yeah, Lindsay, I don't have much more to say because you hit it on the head there, but I'll say that might be an area we might need some extra advocacy this year. You know, anything that includes the words climate or gives service to working on climate might be a problem for us this year. So not more to say that it is there, and we just need to pay particular attention to it, I think, and some extra advocacy. That's going to be a sweet spot for some of the folks in the Republican Party to try to go after and try to redirect some of those dollars. So just a caution there, a little red flag. And I'll just say, again, this isn't a part of the Farm Bill itself, but just harkening back to the Inflation Reduction Act that was passed late last year, there's a bunch of money in particular on energy issues and climate around agriculture that's a part of the Inflation Reduction Act. So there's what I think that's like $20 billion. It's $20 billion for USDA to work on climate smart issues. And so if you haven't taken a look at that and what the USDA had received from the Inflation Reduction Act, that was a big win for agriculture and climate and conservation intersection groups. We want to make sure that's kept together too. I had heard there might be an effort they might try to include language in the new Farm Bill to come after that money and redirect some of that too. But again, it's technically outside of the Farm Bill. It was through the IRA, not through the Farm Bill, but just a word of warning for folks too who work on it.
Yeah, and the Rural Energy Enhancement Program, REAP, touches upon solar and alternative energy quite a bit as well, I think, and that funding is authorized through the Farm Bill directly. So there are certainly a lot of ways in which the Farm Bill touches on energy use, and should do so in ways that are more innovative and more sustainable in the future. So that's something that we've definitely heard a lot about from our members. So I'm going to thank you all for being such good sports about these Jamboard exercises. I'm going to direct us to the next one. Actually, so we can maybe move through this one pretty quickly, but the idea is for you to drag some of these stars into the policy recommendation that you are kind of most excited about. Feel free to move more than one star if you'd like. And this is just another way to kind of get a sense of what parts of the Farm Bill matter most to the Reimagine Appalachia Coalition. And if you want to create more stars, feel free to do that. I tried to create enough to accommodate the size of the group that we anticipated, but and this is obviously not the whole range of solutions that are within the Farm Bill, but just a little exercise to kind of get us thinking about what sort of changes we'd like to see. And as folks are working on that, I'm going to go ahead and queue up the last Jamboard exercise here, which is just kind of a general brainstorming discussion of, which has already kind of been happening to an extent as well, of just some initiatives and changes that we think are most important to advocate for in this upcoming year. And for that one, I'm just asking folks to create stickies that indicate, start fleshing out some of those ideas. And I hope too that people feel comfortable jumping off mute and sharing some of that information verbally too. And so some of the things that I added to this Jamboard that I know are important to folks in PASA's network include more agroforestry initiatives and research on dual use solar.
And it's obvious here, but I've added to revive the CCC Act. We've worked really closely with PASA Sustainable Agriculture and a number of other NGOs to get that done with Senator Casey, and a House version. The House version, I think, was led predominantly by no longer with us Congressman Lamb, but a bunch of other folks led the bill as co-sponsors. I think Dwight Evans and Susan Wild from Pennsylvania were on it as well. But trying to get a House and Senate version out there, trying to get that attached to the Farm Bill would be great. We also work a lot with particular watersheds. We work on policy for watersheds, and in particular the Delaware River watershed, Western Pennsylvania watersheds, but there are these preferred conservation landscapes that happen a lot with funding from EPA and DOI. We'd love to see if we can get more money specifically for the Chesapeake Bay watershed. For folks who work and live in Pennsylvania, you know that we have watershed cleanup goals for the Chesapeake Bay watershed, and trying to leverage the state dollars that we have for conservation with the federal dollars for conservation, especially in the agriculture space, would go a long way. So there's a couple other things that we're looking at, and ways to just make these money more accessible for farmers and landowners, right? Something I hear a lot when I go out. I grew up on a dairy farm in rural central Pennsylvania, and a lot of things I still hear from my neighbors back home and my family is that a lot of time this money is still inaccessible, or you have so many hoops you have to hop through, or there's still those cost share requirements that Lindsay had talked about earlier. A lot of that's still pretty challenging. So anyways, we can more incentivize this, make it easier for folks to get the money is better. I'll stop talking now.
One last question that I wanted to throw out to the group too is, if anything comes to mind that you think would be helpful for folks like Ezra and I to be able to put together for you, so that you can feel more comfortable in engaging in Farm Bill advocacy, or if there's any information that you feel like is missing from your kind of your understanding of the Farm Bill that you think would be an important piece. I'd also be curious to hear any thoughts on that, and ways that we can be more helpful advocates to put forth the sorts of changes that you'd like to see.
And just for folks' knowledge here, I'm gonna have to hop here, unfortunately, to another meeting, but I'm gonna put my email in the chat. If you all want to continue the conversation, happy to be a resource and be co-collaborators on all this. So I'm really passionate about ag. I got to the environmental movement, conservation movement through agriculture, growing up on a dairy farm and playing in a bunch of streams and creeks around my farm and seeing crayfish and fishing and all that stuff. And then really got into land conservation and parks and forests. So really passionate about this stuff, working in Pennsylvania, but really across the region, and have a pretty keen sense of what's happening in Harrisburg and DC. Unfortunately, I don't know what's going on in the other state capitals, but if you have anything Farm Bill related questions, DC, Harrisburg, happy to be a resource. I'll just put my email in the chat for y'all.
Great. Yeah, thanks for that reminder too, Ezra. I will do the same. Drop my email in the chat, Lindsay@pasafarming.org. And I also just want to put in a general request too, if there are folks that know of any farmers who are interested in potentially hosting a legislator on their farm or coordinating a farm tour. We are always looking for to elevate the voices of farmers. They're, the most impactful in terms of actually getting changes made in policy. So if you work with any farmers or are friendly with farmers who are interested in having a more prominent place within this Farm Bill discussion, I would love to be able to get the chance to connect with them. Great. And I do see that folks are still populating the Jamboard, which I really, really appreciate. Thank you. And there's some, just really crucial ideas about what this next Farm Bill could look like.
Lindsay, there's a lot of good stuff in here.
Yeah.
Great. So what we're hoping to do, folks, and we'll talk with the leaders of the Reimagined Appalachia Coalition. Our hope is to pull all of this information together that we are able to glean from these great minds here today, put it all into a main document, and this will help us consult and dictate what our work plan is for this next year, for what Reimagined Appalachia wants to do on the 23 Farm Bill. So I'm sure we'll get in touch with you here soon with the takeaways from today, and we'll try to grab all this stuff and put it in one place so we can share it all around.
This is Laura Freeman from Kentucky. I have a question. I have lobbied about ag for 40 years, and usually I go to Washington. I'm a farmer. I make my entire living farming. I go up there, and whatever organization it is, it's usually organic farmers. They give me a packet, and they say, here's your ask. Here's McConnell's office. Go. So are you all going to do that for us, or do we need to make it on our own?
Yeah, so I can speak to one lobby day opportunity that's coming up in March. That's March 6th through 8th. The National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition is coordinating a bunch of groups. And I know actually Young Farmers will also be hosting a lobby day around that time on, I think, the 7th. Adrian, correct me if I'm wrong. But so yes, if that's something that you are interested in doing, I would be happy to facilitate a conversation between you and a legislator that has some specific policy asks that organizations like the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition have put together, one-pagers to help guide that discussion. So definitely reach out to me and I can figure out how to put that opportunity together.
Okay, good. That Organic Farmers Association, OFA, has got their fly-in exact same time on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll hit you up.
Great. Yeah, and NSAC is also putting together a big climate action rally for farmers on the Tuesday, whatever, I think it's the 7th of that time. So there's going to be a lot of activity going on around the Farm Bill during that particular stretch of days in Washington. So I think it should be a great time to get some important advocacy done. Great. Does anyone have any other questions or thoughts about Farm Bill organizing that they'd like to take the last few moments that we have today to share or articulate? All right, well, it looks like our breakout room is closing soon. Thank you all again for engaging in this work. And yeah, please be in touch if you have more thoughts to share. Appreciate it.
Here comes a lot of people. So I just went through this spiel, so sorry for the folks who have to hear it again, but thanks for coming back to the main room. We're just gonna wait another minute or so. Actually, I think it almost looks like everyone's back. Couple seconds or so for folks to get situated, but then we're gonna do a little bit of debrief and close us out. So thanks for staying along with us.
Yes.
Feel free to add a little react how your breakout rooms went, because we weren't able to go. So we want to see.
Yeah, let's we have a couple polls, but yeah, if you can do a little reaction at the bottom of the screen, you can, if you push a little smiley face, you can maybe do a quick little reaction of how you felt about your breakout room. Or feel free to drop it in the chat. Let's see, we have I think we have 2 polls, and Annie knows which polls are which, so I'm gonna we're gonna drop those polls in the chat when those are ready. Here I see it is, so folks can open up that Minty poll. That is one of the what's the main reason you joined today? So we want to hear about why you joined us, and those responses, if you can click that, will pop up on the screen as you guys fill that out. In addition to the Mentimeter poll, and I don't want to overwhelm you all with links, but we do actually have a more formal, oh, I'm so excited. I love watching these things come up. We do have a more formal survey that allows you to give substantive comment on your workshops, because there are hundreds of you. We've had over 400 people engage with the summit in some capacity. It's incredibly valuable for us to if you have a moment to reflect. We love criticism. We take compliments, but honestly, we're not as good at those as the criticism sometimes. I see nodding heads. But yeah, so again, fill out that first poll to let us know, let us see in the beautiful thing. Who put my name in there? Surely it's some other day. No, that's really funny to me. Okay, so yeah, so while we're filling out this poll,
Oh, it was like more Dana. It's like
yeah,
instead of cowbell, more Dana.
Oh, no accounting for taste, I guess. So while we're filling out the poll, if folks want to share in the chat or come off mute, we're not going to do a formal debrief before I go around to every workshop, but I would, encourage folks to come off mute and share with us if there were top learnings for them, things that they are taking away, things that they're excited to dig into, observations like that, that folks can share with us. And yes, I'm so sorry we had to interrupt the apprenticeships conversation. Clearly, and you can also request more events, things you want us to have more events on, so you can keep talking. So anyone want to start us off? Maybe someone from the apprenticeship workshop can tell us a little bit about why how great the conversation was. Come off mute, we want to hear your voices.
I can go if nobody else wants to.
Go
Yeah,
for
we
it.
had a really great session. We heard from folks who are actually doing apprenticeship programs and pre-apprenticeship programs in the region. And we heard from the Department of Labor in terms of some of their priorities. So I think we had a great mix. We heard about how apprenticeship can really be a life-changing path to a career, not just a short-term job. And we talked a little bit about some challenges around transportation. That was a kind of a recurring question, especially in rural areas. And one of the things that we talked about there was pre-apprenticeship and some financial support for transportation as part of pre-apprenticeship or apprenticeship readiness as a way to get at that challenge.
That's great. I can't wait. And I think for folks who are excited about that, there are going to be lots of next steps as we build out that work. So we'll keep an eye on it. Anybody else want to share any interesting observations or things they're taking with them, or conversations that they want to make everyone jealous that they didn't get to hear?
Anybody who hasn't seen the Reimagine Beaver County video of their visioning process should watch it. We should drop that in the chat. It's very inspiring.
Absolutely.
You just want to ride on that riverboat.
Oh, there's a riverboat involved.
Well, if we get the funding, we could put a riverboat on the Ohio River after they clean it up.
I love a good riverboat.
The next Reimagine retreat can be there on the riverboat.
All right. Thanks for folks who are filling out that second poll. Yes. Energy efficiency in home construction. I'm very excited about energy efficiency. I always say, it's not as salacious as some of our issues, but there's no kilowatt like the one you didn't spend, right? Love those kilowatts we just never used.
This is Leo Samaripa from DNV, and we work in energy efficiency. And one of the things that we like to talk about is that energy efficiency jobs are often more local and more, US based, but more within your community, because each project has to be installed in a local business or a local home. Whereas, a power plant, there could be one really big power plant in one area, and that's great for that area, but the rest of the region that's getting that electricity doesn't actually have the jobs from that power plant. And clean energy in general, not only energy efficiency, but distributed solar is another thing that has a lot more local jobs, where a lot of the work and the cost is installing, these individual panels and small projects locally. So I think there's a real connection that we want to draw between the funding in the IRA for clean energy and the opportunity for local jobs, local apprenticeships.
Thank you. We love a comment that ties it all together. I'm always, the more complicated you can make it, the more realistic it is. I think there's a tendency to oversimplify, and I think our problems are complicated, and our solutions must be too. But doesn't mean they can't be easily understandable and rooted in what we know. But I appreciate the way you're tying those threads together there. Anybody else want to share? Also, folks can share, organizational information. One of the things that I miss about in-person events is the tabling and getting a chance to learn about all the organizations that are present. And I love how many folks attend this event, but of course we do miss on some of the details. So if folks want to share links about their work in the chat, things like that, we can share those in our last couple of minutes together. And then, I just would open again for anybody who wants to share any, and just come off mute or raise your hand if you're interested in sharing any reflections on the day or what's coming next. Is that Sarah's hand I see up?
Yeah, I just want to give a shout out to the Farm Bill session. I was just taking notes, but Ezra and Lindsay did a really good job laying the table for why it's relevant. It's happening right now. It's critical to get everybody involved, and it touches on so many parts of our lives. So I would encourage folks to check in with them or look at the notes. And the opportunity is right now. This is the time when people are paying attention and drafting things. So it was a great session.
That's so exciting. Yeah, absolutely. With legislation, I think it trickles into the news when it's too late to get involved in shaping it. So now is the time when nobody's talking about the Farm Bill to talk about the Farm Bill. And one of the things that was mentioned in the Black Appalachia Coalition workshop was that it's not just about farming, it's about food, it's about SNAP. And I hear a lot of folks complaining about how regressive some of our agricultural policies are. The Farm Bill comes around about once every 5 years. So it really is an exciting time. And I think we have really set the stage for some interesting conversations with all the push that we did and education that we did around the IRA and the bipartisan infrastructure law. So I'm really curious to see what we can get done. But yeah, when we do have a policy call, we have a policy team at Reimagine, and I think we'll be talking more about the Farm Bill in our Twice Monthly campaign meetings that we have. So if this is something that's interesting to folks, Amy Camp, I see your hand up.
Hi, I was in the storytelling breakout, and we had a really helpful conversation, I thought, about the importance of storytelling in this work and how important it is to center the voices of people who are most impacted, how to tell stories without exploiting people or situations, the importance of repetition and making sure that your stories are placed in the right locations, the right publications, that sort of thing. It was a really helpful session, and I think probably anyone that was in there would agree. And we were also reminded that Reimagine Appalachia may be able to serve as a resource in terms of telling your stories.
Yeah, I always feel like I need to say we punch above our weight class. We look bigger than we are. We're actually only like 4 or 5 people. Most of us are part-time, but ask us, because we want to help. And if we can't, we want to find the person who can. So absolutely, absolutely be in touch. We're so excited to have those conversations. Arafili.
Hi, I just wanted to say thank you so much for this event. This has been a really beautifully run summit. So, and I'm a facilitator, so I'm thankful for that. I was in the Black Appalachian Coalition breakout group and just wanted to highlight the beautiful facilitation that Bishop did in that room. She started with a check-in question that really illuminated how the narrative about Appalachia is an erasure of the Black communities that live there. And so like when we talk about impacted communities, we mean a lot of things. And one of the things that we mean that is important to call out is how racism and environmental racism specifically has led to some of these things that we are trying to fix with the new federal legislation and the emerging clean energy transformation opportunity. And so being able to call that out, like the storytelling group was saying, in telling the story about what we're trying to do with our different projects is so important in being held accountable to doing actual anti-racist work along with clean energy transition in these communities. So thank you so much for highlighting those points to everyone who was in that room.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think storytelling is so important. I'm the first one to get a little bit wonky, because when we talk about these issues all day, every day, it does save time. And yeah, one of the questions we got, I remember on our first call that we had after the IRA passed, was somebody said, how do we talk about this in our communities? Because the way we talk about it on these calls sometimes is not how we talk about it in our communities. So it's not how you make it real. And so thinking about that storytelling, the importance of that, of making it real, of making it grounded in the folks who need this money the most, is one of the things I pulled out of that. Bishop Marcia, I also want to echo Arafili's appreciation of your great leadership. Other folks have observations or next steps that they're excited about, they want to share?
I'm always excited. So that's how I wake up in the morning, to convince myself I'm always excited amongst all of the stuff that goes on. But I think the one thing that that I'm walking away with, and we wrestled with in the conversation with Black, is we have so many different organizations here. We have so much varying representation. And the question that I have is, and I think Crystal brought this up, is like, we're still kind of like in these these isolated lanes. And so how do we come together, where, one, we are creating this bigger conversation or this broader conversation that is acknowledging a lot of what Arafili stated, as well as, looking at the fact of what does that do and how do we interlace and interweave these things. So we're creating like this big social tapestry that's breaking down these political lines and barriers that consistently keep us separated, breaking down the white supremacist culture and language in such a way that we are breaking divides, sacred, secular, rural, urban, all of these different things. And how do we do it in such a way that we don't lose sight of who we are? People don't feel like they're in a political crisis or an identity crisis, because you have to like identity politics, and that you don't have to explain yourself, but you get to be yourself in this work. Because the one thing that, was mentioned is like, yeah, it's cool to tell the story. It's not cool to tell my story though, because your lived experience and my lived experience is different. And also, being very cognizant of how do we tell the story? Who do we need to tell the story? And you're right, timing is great. But so for me, it's like, how do we come together in support of one another and, of coalition building, so that we are modeling where we're breaking down certain barriers and isolations, and we become revisionist. And we have people speaking up for people who are often left out, lost, and they're losing out because nobody's enunciating. And if they are, they're enunciating it for their benefit or to exploit, rather than to build up and inspire and to equip and to allow their voice to be the leader of who they are. And in a real, authentic, truthful, transparent way that's building up their leadership. So we're having if I could make an announcement, we're going to be planning a Black Strategy Summit, and one of those things is we'd love to have you all be a part to wrestle with this conversation, because it's going to be the community benefit agreements. A lot of people don't understand it. All of what everybody's talked about here was beautiful. I said in the Black, it was delicious. It was a good plate. It was a good buffet. But at the end of the day, we're the ones who knows. What about the ones who don't know? How do we take that buffet and how do we begin to take it and make it, take it into the communities and give, people an opportunity to feast and learn at the same time? We can't keep all the deliciousness to ourselves. We can't keep all the wisdom to ourselves. We can't keep all the knowledge to ourselves. We have to figure out, how do we let the dam break in such a way that it's flowing into the communities? So again, thank you, ReImagine, for this, and appreciating you always and forever, and inviting you all to come in and to sit and sup with us as well, with the Black, Appalachian Coalition, but also just as a whole to say, what, we're tearing down everything, but the real solutions that we need. So let's create some wreckage and some ruins so that some people can have access to some things that they don't necessarily have access to. Thank you.
I put your website in the chat so folks can follow up with that. And yes, a round of applause. Thank you always for your beautiful words. And I think with that, I might actually close this out with a little business, because I don't think, I think as a beautiful way to close this out. So I did put the website in there for folks to follow our words. Bishop Marcia is definitely follow her work, and not highly recommend that summit, so you can hear more of her words. So just a little bit of nuts and bolts. We're so excited to continue this work for you all. Our staff is going to be working, as well as our note takers, who are almost all volunteers, to get all this information collated. In the meantime, please be in touch with our staff. We're very excited to work with you all together. And then if we can put you in touch with other folks, let us know. We're not able to share the full list of all attendees, because it would be sharing 400 people's information with 400 people, and it's just a little bit of a privacy burden for people. So I apologize, but we're happy to facilitate networking in any way that we can. We really appreciate breaking down silos and getting more folks working together. I always say more brains, more better. So So the next steps for you all to be in touch, you have all been forced onto our listserv. You will get our notes. But again, I think our twice monthly campaign update meeting is just a wonderful way for us to kind of get in a room together. And I highly encourage you all to reach out to Molly or myself with ideas for speakers that you would like to hear more from, that maybe you saw in this event that you want to see us highlight in an individual way in the campaign update meeting with a little more space. Or if you would like to join that campaign update meeting and talk a little bit about your work, because I just want to honor all of the wisdom that is in this room that we may have not have heard from in the big room, but it's an incredible crew that joined us today. So I'm just incredibly honored to be with y'all. What did I miss? Anyway, so anything else before we go? Molly, did I get it all?
Well, let's thank Dana for facilitating both.
Well, now I'm going to thank you. That's the thing, Molly. Thank Molly for getting us all together and helping it run smoothly. And thank Annie for the heroic work in the background so that we were able to just move into our conversations instead of having endless dead time.
I'll just add one thought. We will be going through the notes and the recordings closely and trying to collate it all into key takeaways and the work we need to do together, and we'll share that as well. And if you have any final thoughts that you didn't get to share yesterday or today, fill out the survey and put them in there.
Thank you so much. Can we drop the survey one last time? Is it fresh for folks?
I'm grabbing it.
Thank you. So we're going to drop that Google survey. It's a short little note. I would appreciate it so much if y'all can take just a minute and fill that out. And thank you, Jeffrey, for mentioning the disability in the region. It is the region with the highest disability in the country. And I think I will say well, it's not really an excuse, but we do tend to work less on those issues. So when we had our staff retreat, that was actually a critique that we had internally for ourselves. And it's good to hear that coming externally as well. So appreciate that. And I will be thinking about that. And be in touch if you have recommendations. Can you email?
Yes, Betty, we will share via email.
Yeah. Great. Thank you all. We're closing out. I think we can stop the recording. If there's any last questions or final things, I've got 5 minutes. If anybody wants to say anything.
It's going to be a heck of a year.
Who's ready to get
got
to
a
work?
lot of work to do, but it's exciting.
Take a nap and then get to work. Yeah. Wonderful. April, I see you off mute.
Just wanted to say thank you so much for bringing this all together. Sorry, my camera's not working, but this is always inspiring and informative. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for coming. Thank you for all the work that you do. You're such a wealth of knowledge. We often are like, we don't know this, so we'll just try April first. For better or worse.